Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about Earmen Angel. It's a small desktop DAC and headphone amp that despite its size has plenty of connectivity options and features and power too. So let's talk about it. So Angel is a DAC based on a Sabre chip. I'll put that on the screen. And it has three digital inputs. One USB and one shared SPDIF and Toslink. That's basically this hybrid 3.5 millimeters connector for SPDIF, and inside of it, at the end of it, there is an optical receiver for a mini Toslink or micro Toslink. I'm not sure is it mini or micro connector. So basically you can use either one of these. You cannot connect both at the same time, but you can combine USB with one of these. And also, because this is a battery-powered DAC with two batteries of 3000 milliampere hours, you have a separate USB-C for charging. You can simultaneously use a DAC and charge it. And in my own experience, I was able to get anywhere from 3 to 4, maybe 5 hours of playback through this one. But take this with a grain of salt because I did not conduct any sort of controlled tests. I was just using it and I've noticed that I had around that time until I had to charge it again. So as I personally see it, this one can be used as a stationary desktop DAC connected to a power supply at all times, but if you need to carry it around somewhere with your laptop or something, it can provide several hours of playback. And if this was one of those pocket-sized DACs, I would say that that number is on the low side, really. But considering that how powerful this one is and how much drive it actually has, that's completely comparable to like big desktop products that are powered from the AC socket. I think that this is quite a decent amount of time because it does not sacrifice performance to achieve that portability at all. So consider it as a fully capable, fully powerful desktop product that can be mobile for a short period of time. Now that said, let's talk about its outputs. On the back here you have two line outputs. And one is single-ended 3.5 millimeters out, while the other one is 4.4 balanced output. And for example, to test it with my regular gear, I used this cable that has 4.4 on one side and then 2 XLR on the other side. So that way you can hook this up to any sort of integrated amp or headphone amplifier or anything like that. I quite like the quality of this cable, so I'll leave the link down below in the description. I bought it cheap on AliExpress and it feels solid and sturdy. I hope it will last. In the front you can also find balanced 4.4 and single-ended 3.5 millimeters output for your headphones. And next to these two there's a small gain button that enables you to switch from low gain to high gain and then switch for direct or pre-out mode. This does not affect headphone output. Headphone output is, of course, always controllable, always have controllable volume, but this switch actually controls if you have fixed line level output on the back, on these line level outs, or you have a controllable pre-out. And I'll put those numbers on the screen. And last thing worth mentioning is that Earmen claims this is a truly balanced design. So those 4.4 outputs are not there just for convenience or to trick buyers into believing that there is balanced circuitry, differential circuitry inside of the unit. There actually is balanced circuitry inside. All that said, I think it's time to actually talk about its sound. And I'll start by saying that I've tested it as a DAC only, using its line outputs, and it performs well. It has that very detailed, very focused crystal clear sound that you would expect to get from a modern Sabre DAC device. But that said, I have to say, and I'll be very short with this, I would not buy this unit to use it as a DAC primarily. Because at this price point, and it costs 800 euros, you can get better sounding DACs. And Earmen's own Tradutto is among them, in my opinion. It's a stationary DAC, it doesn't have a headphone output, but it just sounds fuller, more authoritative. And yeah, there are many other DACs at that price point that will outperform, will sound bigger and juicier than Earmen Angel here. So it's really that simple. You have highly detailed, very fast, very precise and revealing sound on its DAC outputs. And in isolation, it really lacks nothing, but if you compare it directly to the best of competition at this price range, it cannot fully compete with these dedicated DACs. But the real strength of Earmen Angel is its headphone output, in my opinion. Because when I attached any of my headphones to it, basically I used it as a DAC and headphone amp, I was quite positively amazed by the result. And yes, the sounds still have those qualities that I've explained for the line output. You have highly precise, highly focused sound. But clarity and dynamics and just overall drive factor is absolutely great. I've tried listening to several of my favorite like 80s tracks and 90s tracks, something that's so not audiophile music, something like this for example, and there was so much rhythm and drive and energy in the sound of Earmen Angel that I just kept listening one more song, and I truly don't remember when was the last time that I've enjoyed these old hits from my childhood this much. And when I eventually continued testing it and comparing it to other devices, I quickly realized why is that. So for example, when I took a very price comparable Ever Solo DAC Z8, and this one is a beautiful, magnificently made DAC, and you can see the differences in size. What I've actually noticed is that Ever Solo DAC Z8 sounds milder and not as crisp and not as clean as Earmen Angel. And also dynamically speaking, it's more bland. It's a little bit more flat sounding. Also a little bit softer around the edges. So all in all, that drive, that energy and that excitement just went away. When I returned to Earmen here, it just felt like, whoa, music came alive again. There was that edge, that energy, that forward sounding, rhythmic sounding music coming out of my headphones. So I was quite amazed. And then I quickly compared it to SMSL M4 M500 MK2, and I prefer this one as a DAC. If I use its DAC outputs, I prefer M500 MK2 to Angel. It just sounds fuller and lusher, juicier, whereas Angel is a little bit more analytical, sharper sounding, and also narrower. But on a headphone output, Angel is a clear winner in my opinion. It again sounds more energetic, it's more driven, it's so fast-paced and so well controlled and punchy that M500 MK2 here just sounds a little bit sluggish in comparison. It is warmer sounding, it does have fuller bass line a little bit, but the mid-range is just not as revealing, not as well textured, and quick transients are quicker and better defined through Angel. So I was like, okay, this is not a joke. If I really want to see where are the limits of Earmen Angel as a DAC and headphone amp, I have to go with big guns. And I took my topping D90LE and A90D stack. And yeah, this one actually had the same drive and same kick as Earmen Angel, but with more power and more authority. Bassline is fuller, it has more oomph, more authority, and the soundstage is wider and it breathes more around you, it's more spacious. When I move back to Angel here, that quick drive and energy is basically equal to this stack, which is insane, but bassline definitely sounds a little bit thinner and not as authoritative, and also soundstage collapses and it's more centered, more like in your head, compared to wider, more spacious topping presentation here. But that's okay. This stack is noticeably more expensive and bigger, and it's definitely not portable, but it's actually a good show of force of Earmen Angel. What did it take for me to actually surpass it? And then I wanted to check out how capable this headphone output of Earmen Angel actually is. So I've decided to compare it to a dedicated headphone amp. First, I hooked to the line outputs of Earmen Angel. I hooked topping A30 Pro headphone amp. And that one is very powerful, it goes for some 350. And I have to say it was a downgrade actually. D30, oh my god, A30 Pro sounds less defined. It's just a little bit muddier and a little bit darker sounding too, and some of that energy and zest that I so loved with my 80s and 90s hits just got tamed. Maybe it's not more powerful on paper, but in reality its headphone output is of a higher quality and higher fidelity than A30 Pro, which is something. And then I moved to comparing it to topping A90 Discreet, which is a great headphone amplifier costing $600. Yeah, this one matched Earmen Angel in all of those important parts, but it did sound a little bit fuller, just juicier in the bass line and mid bass. Detail retrieval stayed the same basically. Sound staging was again quite similar, and tonality quite similar, except that bass line that was a little bit fuller and more authoritative and just had more punch than Earmen's own headphone amp. And at that point I was thinking, yeah, that's probably A90D is probably showing the limits of the internal deck of Earmen Angel. So I then moved again to the topping D90LE as a pairing for this headphone amp, and I've realized that's when the soundstage actually increased, spaciousness increased, and the tone became a little bit richer and fuller. So what I want to say here is that Earmen Angel is so well balanced DAC and headphone amp, and its headphone output is not a second thought. If anything, it is actually a star of the show here. From the moment I've started testing this Earmen Angel a few weeks ago, I didn't feel a need to switch back to my topping stack. And when I compared them directly in the end, finally, I did notice that topping stack sounds richer and fuller and more authoritative, but in isolation, Earmen Angel, that is also more affordable, sounds so good and has such a good drive and energy that I honestly didn't feel a need to change to something better. So I would use my Gold Planner GL2000 that I really like, or VRM1 headphones with this one, and I was so happy with the sound. It's a sound that I could definitely live with. And the only pairing that I didn't enjoy that much was with Moondrop Venus, because of their colder and more analytical tonality, and also Earmen Angel is leaning to that tonality too. It's a fast-paced, really detailed, but kinda leaner sounding. It doesn't have much in terms of warmth. And if you like something that's really full-bodied and really smooth, it doesn't really do that. So if you have headphones that are also a little bit on the lean and analytical side of things, that pairing would be too much of that. And I wouldn't recommend that. But for anything from balanced, like neutral sounding, to warm and bassy sounding headphones, this Earmen can infuse your sound with such energy and focus. It's just such a dynamic, forward-sounding force that I'm actually struggling to think of anything at this price that could completely match it and rival it. And if you're okay with that really focused, energetic, driven sound that I've described throughout this video, then this one is definitely worth considering. That would be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.